Before we begin our story, you must all understand something. Humanity is not dead. Humanity has not been wiped from the face of the cosmos. We have survived. We have endured. But we are hurting and few in number. We have no friends. We have only a single implacable enemy. The Empire. They need no other name. Many of humanity burned under their guns, designed for ship-to-ship combat, and turned against civilian population centers. I am a survivor. My name is Chris Silva. I am a soldier of Earth. I have one friend. He also came from Earth, has 4 legs, a tail, and drools on me when I sleep. His name is Fido. This is not the story of how we were scattered to the stars. That story is for another day. After a fifth of scotch, assuming there's any left in the universe. No, this is the story that will maybe explain why they were right to fear us. Why we are still fighting, never surrendering. Not everyone likes the Empire, and their reach isn't infinite. Humanity has survived by hiding, by being smarter than the Empire. The day dawned like any other. Fido asleep on Chris Silva's chest, dog drool on the pillow, despite Chris's constant attempts to persuade him that no, the pillow was not for chewing. Silva groaned and started to wake up. Fido stood up, all 80 pounds of Rottweiler, directly on Silva's chest. He shook himself slightly, then jumped off, padding towards the galley. The hum of the ship underneath them provided a blessed relief to Silva's mounting headache. He stumbled into the galley behind Fido, who sat patiently by his bowl, looking expectantly at Silva. Grumbling, Silva pulled a hunk of raw meat out of the refrigerator and tossed it into the bowl. You'd think by now you'd have figured out how to do that yourself. And you'd think by now you'd know not to drink yourself to sleep the day before a job. Oh, for the love of damn dog. Smelly human. I can't help that your nose is so fucking sensitive. I can't help that you smell so goddamn bad. Silva paused and lifted his arm to sniff. Fido pantomimed falling over. Ever since Silva had got him a neurochip and a vocalizer implant, the dog had become rather, well, snarky. A good friend and worse enemy, but snarky. I may have overestimated the time I can go between showers. Really? God, you're putting me off my T-bone. It's not a T-bone. It's Yumapa steak. Tastes like T-bone. You've never had T-bone. Woof. Silva clutched his head and sighed. The dog always knew exactly how to push his buttons. He rolled over and made his way to the shower, which blasted him with water. The ship's purifier would recycle the water after filtering out the impurities. Silva scratched at his tattoo, one of the few things from his past life he'd never quite managed to convince himself to part with. Of the other 3 such things, one was currently eating Yumapa steak in the galley, and the other 2 were locked in a safe, kept in the hidden smuggler's compartment on Silva's ship. Tossing his clothes over his shoulder, Silva made his way back into the galley, where he grabbed a drink that tasted something like coffee, but wasn't, along with a food that looked like a bagel, but wasn't. He sighed and sat down. 12 years. It had been 12 long years since they'd been kicked off Earth by the Empire. Some mornings, Silva still woke up and thought he was back on Earth. Then he'd drink the Strek that served as coffee for those too poor to afford the now highly prized and very rare Earth plant. Eat this food that made a mockery of wheat and deal with his daily pang of homesickness. Fucking Empire cocksuckers. Silva muttered aloud. Bastards, all of them. Now suit up. We've got a job. With that parting remark, Fido walked out of the galley. Yeah. Silva grunted, pulling on his work clothes. Made of closely woven fibers over plates made of some alien metal, his jacket, shirt, and pants together combined to give the soldier a much heightened resistance to plasma, laser, kinetic, and bladed weaponry. His boots were tipped in the same metal that was woven into his under armor, but the coup de grace was the power armor. Made of black metal polished to a sheen, covered in spikes, carefully placed so as not to restrict movement, it was made for war. Humanity was good at a few things, and building weapons of war was one of them. The T-31B power armor was built to give the infantryman the power and armor of a tank, with 20-odd times the mobility. The helmet had a glowing respirator unit built into the front and burning red lights where eye holes should be. It was entirely built for intimidation. The weaponry Silva strapped into place was no less impressive. 2 plasma pistols, a snap rifle, 6 knives of varying length and type, secured in various easy-to-reach locations. He was armed for war. Today, Silva was carrying on humanity's war against the Empire and garnering a small fee from an interested second party. Today's job entailed the taking of a weapons platform from an Imperial convoy to be delivered to a human military base, the coordinates of which would be given to him after proof positive that the mission had been completed. Afterwards, the data would be completely wiped from his ship in every possible way. The nav computer reset, the warp drive's chip wiped, the piece of paper on which the coordinates were written burned. Few chances were taken that one of humanity's few remaining bases could be compromised. No chances were taken on one of the pitifully few worlds humanity still clung to. Fido reappeared, clad in black armor similar to Silva's, albeit manufactured for a dog. Come on. Let's get to work. Come on. Heel. Fido glowered at Silva, who chuckled. For all his augmentations, Fido was still a dog and still got excited whenever something happened. Like for example, going to play with his favorite chew toy, an Imperial weapons convoy. Humming softly to himself a tune that could be identified only by someone who had grown up on Earth with a hefty influence of 70s classic rock, Silva programmed the coordinates into the jump drive. Jumping in 3, 2, 1, jumping. Silva called out. Fido growled softly as their individual molecules were disassembled in real space, reassembled in warp space, disassembled again, and then finally reassembled in real space. Or something like that. The technology, to be frank, was so far beyond basic college-level calculus, the highest math course Silva had taken, so as to cause physical pain when it was explained to him. They appeared in an entirely different quadrant of space. Suffice it to say, 10 hours later, though travel time had seemed instantaneous. Silva turned the ship about and double-checked the coordinates. He smirked. Right on target. Just because he didn't understand mathematically why an engine worked didn't mean he couldn't keep it running smoothly. It had been designed so that people who weren't mechanical engineers, who had studied faster than light travel for 3 decades, could do basic maintenance, a category Silva most definitely fell into. Fido barked from the gunnery station as 3 small black pods shot out into space and began sparking on the Tachin sensors. The mechanics of these were easier to understand. By sending out faster-than-light Tachin pings, they disrupted any dual-optic-style jump drive, which the Empire outfitted all of its ships with. It wasn't dangerous to the ship or its crew, which was why Silva had been able to procure these legally. But it did force the ship into real space. A human checked his watch, a holdover from Earth with a digital face that was currently counting down to 0. Transport arriving in 10 seconds on my mark. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, light 'em up. As the Imperial transport suddenly was pulled from warp space and into real space, Fido let loose with a barrage of area of effect EMP missiles. In between the time in which the Imperial transport realized that it was under attack and needed to raise its shields, the EMP missiles detonated, frying circuitry and rendering the ship helpless. If the transport had managed to get its shields up, the EMP would have been useless, but Silva had gambled, and it had paid off. He clanked his way down to the docking shuttle. He'd paid an exorbitant fee to have restructured with plasma cutters and enough life support for 2 months. Supposedly, for salvage and rescue operations in hazardous space. It worked equally well as a boarding craft. As Silva disengaged the docking magnets and began to propel himself towards the Imperial craft, Fido felt a momentary pang of sympathy for the poor bastards on the other ship. It didn't last long. C-130, rolling down the strip. Silva shouted out the first line to a marching cadence as the plasma cutters broke through the docking bay door and he leaped out into the transport. Why? Because it was fucking terrifying to have a massive alien creature clad in black spiky power armor singing to you. That's why. Tire hit a pothole. And the motherfucker flipped. The Imperials were a rather ugly race by human standards. They thankfully were as corporeal as humans, but that is where the similarities ended. They scuttled around on 6 legs, with 4 arms out in front. Their bulbous heads were entirely hairless and had anywhere between 4 and 10 eyes, which was usually, although not always, a good way to determine their caste. More eyes meant more respect in Imperial culture. Which probably was one of the reasons they felt no guilt about exterminating a 2-eyed race. Their skin was mottled green and gray, a natural camouflage for their heavily forested home planet. It clashed rather poorly with their brilliant orange combat armor, which was definitely not frontline quality. After all, this was just a cargo transporter. 12 army rangers caught inside. Silva continued singing off-key and as loudly as he could while he reached forward and crushed one of their heads in his fist. One of the advantages of growing up on a high-gravity world meant that he was very strong in zero or low gravity. This of course being the former. Imperials had evolved from a planet with gravity at about 1/3 of Earth's standard. Their endoskeleton had evolved with blows from that gravity well in mind. They had not evolved with blows from a creature born in a gravity well that exerted almost 10 meters per second of acceleration straight downwards. 12 Army Rangers Kentucky Fried. And with that, Silva began to really fight. Unholstering a plasma pistol, he proceeded to burn holes through the crew that had assembled to try and stop him. Their own weapons, a mixture of Loss rifles and blades, did very little in return. His power armor was too durable to be more than scratched by a blade, and his shielding disrupted laser beams to the extent that they were far less powerful. Still able to burn through his armor after a few seconds of constant concentrated fire, but their owners didn't get that chance. Moving so fast he blurred through the air, bouncing off the walls and taking full advantage of the zero gravity, his plasma pistol punching holes through their light combat armor, adrenaline surging through his veins. He was as a god of the battlefield. Nigh untouchable, nigh unbeatable, nigh. Is that an anti-tank gun? The roar of a massive bolt of superheated plasma split the air, answering Silva's unspoken question. In the narrow confines of the corridor, there was nowhere to go. The bolt cut through 3 of the remaining crew and slammed into Silva's armor, which immediately began giving off critical readings for his chest and shoulders. Shit. Drawing out his second pistol, Silva began to fill the hull with plasma. It wasn't particularly accurate, despite what some old movies will show you. But it was very good at making the aliens keep their heads down as Silva pushed himself rapidly towards the anti-tank gun. He floated over the tri-barreled gun and kicked out hard, snapping the spines of the 2 gunners. He paused in a crouch, guns held out ahead of him, the dead bodies of crew members behind him. He slowly amplified his hearing, using the external microphones of the suit. He heard nothing, just the gentle hissing of nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane, as the alien life support systems continued to serve their purpose. Nobody made life support systems dependent on electricity. Linked into the rest of the ship, sure. But voltage could not matter. If it mattered, an EMP attack, a very simple attack, could be very deadly. Slowly, Silva rose from his crouch and holstered his pistols. He turned and looked at the anti-tank gun. This was what he'd been sent for, the newest Imperial anti-tank gun. Unless, the Imperials had started to issue them as standard anti-boarding weapons. The captain had made an executive call to try and stop Silva. With a slight shrug, Silva went deeper into the ship, following the map that had appeared in his HUD and pulling the gun behind him. He followed the twisting corridors to the cargo hold, where he found the rest of the ship's cargo, and generously enough, a cargo loader for him to borrow. His lips twitched at the thought. He tossed a few boxes marked with the Imperial words for rifles and explosives onto the lifter. The human military machine could always use some more. Their food was unpalatable to humans. Not poisonous, humans just couldn't process it. And eventually, it came out much the same as it went in. Silva keyed his comm unit. Leather to Rottweiler. Leather to Bulldog. Come in Rottweiler. Rottweiler, go ahead Leather. Bring her around to the cargo hold and link up. I've got some goodies for delivery. Roger that Leather, Rottweiler out. Silva smiled slightly. Obviously Fido would be called Rottweiler, and Silva had chosen his own nickname based on a piece of historical armor trivia. Giving their own names away to the probably non-existent listening Imperials wouldn't be too bad, but it would suck to have to use fake names all the time. So, they stuck to code names over the comms. A loud clanging noise outside the hull told Silva that Fido had managed to pull the ship around and was docking even now. Smiling broadly now, he waited. A glowing against the far wall was the only warning he had before a massive plasma cutter burst through in a shower of sparks and molten metal. It swept in a full circle, then withdrew. The massive slice of the external cargo bay door that had just been cut out floated serenely into the cargo hold until Fido activated the external gravity generators when it crashed to the ground. Another gift of the derelict salvagers' cover was their ship had all sorts of neat goodies that made looting enemy ships easier. Silva climbed into the cargo loader and walked it into his ship, the alien guns and explosives with him. He hopped out and signaled to Fido, who was sitting in the cargo bay control center. Fido sealed the door behind him, and Silva made his way back to the bridge, stopping on the way to put his power armor back in its docking station. He opened a secure comm link to the number he had been given after accepting the assignment. Leather Zulu 1, Leather Zulu 1. Confirm Bravo Delta, Niner. Zulu 1 Leather. Came back the response, the go-ahead for Silva's coded report. 1 green, 2 green, 3 yellow, 4 green. The mission had so far taken 4 stages. Finding the ship, pulling the ship out of FTL, securing the weapons, and returning to Silva's ship. Green meant the plan went exactly as expected, yellow that there were complications, but the plan had succeeded, and red meant a stage had failed entirely. This specific coding served 2 purposes, letting command know the mission was a success, and specifically which parts were a success, in case something went wrong between stage 4 and stage 5. 5 go. 3. 1. 2. Start. 034.783. Break. 946.001. Break. 800.199. Confirm. Confirm. The transmission was terminated at the source. The long string of numbers had been recorded by Silva on pen and paper. Even now, security algorithms were purging every record of the call from the ship's hard drive. Silva put the numbers into the nav program as coordinates. 312 meant they were in order of Z, X, and Y coordinates. The long strings of numbers were the standard coordinates for where the human base was located in the quadrant. As he finished, he looked at Fido, who looked back at him, tail wagging, tongue hanging out slightly. "Alright Fido, let's go get some R&R. The author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.